Stephanie Clark, it is so good to meet you. I am a pet foodie, which doesn't mean that I'm against commercial pet foods. It means that I'm really into them and I want to know more about them. And it was really great to learn about your expertise and what BSM Partners does, which is create many pet food products and other products, from what I can tell, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think it's really important that somebody who has a lot of letters after her name. I don't know how you fit those on a business card. Oh my
I
God.
don't.
Oh my God. So she's got a PhD and then she gets a postdoctorate at the Mayo Clinic to actually study dog saliva, oxytocin. Like you're a brainiac. And then you've got all these other letters because you're specialized, super specialized, hyper specialized in animal nutrition. So it's great to meet you because just recently some dog trainer was wanting to come on the show and wrote and said, yes, and I'm a certified animal nutrition specialist. I'm like, certified by who? Can we talk for a minute about online degrees that are given out to people in nutrition? It's frightening. There are people who are getting money from pet owners saying, I'm a dog nutritionist or a cat nutritionist. They have no technical, medical, or even educational background. They took an online course. Can you talk to that for a minute? Because you're like the other end of the spectrum.
Some people say, why did you go into nutrition? It's passionate. There's a lot of crazy passionate people.
Yep.
And really, once you go on Google, everyone's a nutritionist, I swear. And everyone wants to start a pet food because this pet food didn't meet their dog's needs. And it's the same story, right? We hear it all
Yes.
the time. And it's okay,
Yes.
how many origin stories start with that? And there's a lot of certificates out there. And the crazy thing about certificates is they're not regulated. So Joe Pet Foodie could go out there and create a program, make a fancy website, and then as long as people buy into it, attend the courses or the webinars, pay the
Yeah.
fee or sit for an exam, really, you're certified. And you get a cute little piece of paper that says
Yeah.
you're certified in whatever.
It's frightening because
Yeah,
it really is that pathetic.
it's
And the
that
pe-
that's
and the
simple.
people, yeah, it is pathetically simple. And then the people giving the advice are reductionists. All commercial pet food is really toxic. It's made of toxic things. It's toxic for your animals. I have the solution. Now, maybe they have decided they're going to make something that they're going to sell you, but mostly they're working on people's fears and
Yeah.
selling a negative story which has no basis in science. Now, that's my understanding as an investigative journalist and as an author. Would you also agree that commercial pet food does not cause cancer in dogs or cats?
Yeah, I don't think we know one certain thing that's going to definitively cause cancer every single time, like the cause and effect.
But it's not pet food. Yeah, they eat it every day, but we eat some similar things each day, and no one says, "Oh, it was the bran flakes." Yep, those
Yeah.
bran flakes, you ate them every day. And not a believer that you should feed your dog the same brand of kibble with the same ingredients every day for their entire life. But that's only because it doesn't meet a full spectrum of nutrients and proteins that might have been different from batch to batch. That's a different story than saying pet food is toxic. I think that a lot of listeners have been frightened. Their dog did get maybe even pancreatitis or maybe seizures. Half of them are going to get cancer. So that's a really good selling tool if you're going to be a fear monger.
Yeah.
Your dog's going to get cancer anyway, people, because sadly, this is what has happened genetically, because cancer is genetic. Some is environmental. If you were in that movie with Julia Roberts and you were drinking and bathing in toxic cancer water. But other than that, it really comes from some genetic background that lots of brilliant people are studying. When you read about a company that's selling fear mongering and then claiming that the thing they're making is actually the solution, it'll either cure the cancer, stop the cancer, not give you cancer. Does your hair go on fire or you just shrug and say, I'm a scientist? Sorry, I can't go there.
A little bit of both. I kind of shrug my shoulders and like we throw around the word research, especially with marketing,
Yeah.
but is there research to actually back this up? And if there is research, is it good research? Is it sound science? Does it actually support what you want it to say or what you're trying to say? But then
Right.
the fear mongering, I never realized how bad it was until really recently. And it just seems like instead of talking about how good your brand is or how good this food is or how you care about pets, it's the other guy is bad, so you should
That's
choose
right.
me.
That's
And it's
right.
like a weird mudslinging competition, which it really just builds distrust with pet parents. Because at the end of the day, they're like, this brand says that this brand is bad, but I've been
Right.
feeding this brand. Do I not care about my pet? And it's a
And then
spiral.
and then there's a third brand that says, "Oh no, but the one that said they were good, they aren't either." So
Right.
we're going to home cook it for you and ship it to you. And we have research showing that it's way better. Now, let's go back to the concept of research. I just want to call out all of your accomplishments as a scientist. You are a board certified, an actual board, a veterinary board, companion animal nutritionist, a certified veterinary technologist, and you're vice president of nutrition at BSM Partners that has this huge staff of vets and nutritionists and researchers and scientists, food scientists, basically, making all kinds of foods and supplements and nutraceuticals for other companies that can get them branded, which we can talk about later because that's also very interesting. But you have authored and co-authored significant peer-reviewed research, which we have to talk about what that means, in companion animal nutrition and welfare, including stress in working animal, the effects of pre and probiotics on the microbiome, alternative treatments and nutraceuticals, digestibility evaluation, feeding trials, and functional ingredients. It's important to say all that because how many bags of dog food say? And we also included in this perfectly nice, good enough dry dog food, something that's really good for digestion. And you think, oh, I've heard of prebiotics, or is it probiotics? Or wait, are you supposed to have both at once, or aren't you supposed to separate them? It's like we hear these words thrown around, and then the company says we've put it in. But then my understanding is that it depends on where in the process of making dry kibble you
Mhm.
put something in, and does it survive the process of being made or sitting in a bag for even up to a few years?
Yeah.
What about that? You've done research that other people of your equal stature have read the research or the paper and said, yep, that's good science. There were enough animals, there was a control group, there was enough data that your conclusion, whatever it was, legitimate science. So, what about these companies that put words like a lot of these words, microbiome and gut and digestibility, and they put it on the bag? And I don't, does it confuse people? I don't think it encourages them to buy it. It just makes them confused.
I guess if they're looking for those words, sure, like it's right on the
Right.
bag. But I always encourage pet owners, like when in doubt, just call the manufacturer, call the brand, because if they've actually done their due diligence, they should be able to say, we put this in our kibble and we actually tested it. And the finished product has X amount. And then
Yes.
you can go and say, is X amount enough for my dog or my cat?
That's the point. Okay, so some companies, even with canned food, if they
Mhm.
aren't on top of the testing, they put in the taurine, let's say, to the wet cat food. And what goes in at the manufacturing end does not necessarily come out to that amount. It probably doesn't on the end when it's processed. So somebody has to be opening cans and testing them in a scientific way, or else your cat's either getting too much or not enough.
Yeah.
Could be killed by it or made very ill. Same idea.
Yeah, for all nutrients, really. And that's why testing your product and testing the ingredients that go in it, it costs a little bit more money on the forefront. And if brands are doing it, they should have no problem talking about it.
That should be the thing they should be proud of.
Yeah. Yeah.
We came up with a formula. We had scientists, real decent scientists come up with it. But now we test every 17th batch. We wouldn't have to test every batch. I don't know how many bags come out of a batch, right? But just random testing, like random
Mhm.
drug testing, it's random vitamin and mineral testing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not what companies are doing.
Yeah. Some companies aren't. And the sad thing is those that aren't sharing it. And
Right.
that's what I think people need to see is hey, we've formulated for complete and balanced the whole AFCO statement, and we've now tested it. And here's our nutritional panel. Does this work for your pet?
Yeah. And if you're unsure, talk to your vet who
Yeah.
doesn't have the letters after his or her name that Stephanie Clark does, because nutrition is not their main goal as a veterinarian, but they probably know something, or they can reach out to a company that they trust that has somebody who can say, those are good levels. For a
Yeah.
puppy, not so good for a senior dog of whatever the level may be. So let's say, just to jump ahead a little bit, people have said to me, why don't you make products, you Tracy Hodgner? I'm like, because I'm not a schmata person. Don't want to be a schmata salesman. I'm not going to make t-shirts that say dog talking kitties too, and I'm not going to make food with my stamp on it because then I'm not objective. And
Hmm.
so I'm not in that business. I'm in the information business. I'm in the dig into it, learn more, and then find smart people to discuss it with so that it can make the people listening smarter themselves.
Yeah.
Let's say I said to you, and by the way, can I just say the world does not need another dog biscuit, like a hole in the head. But let's say I came to you to BSM Partners and said, I want to make Tracy Hotchner biscuits. I can do that, right? I can hire your company,
Yeah.
formulate a biscuit, and then you and your colleagues would say to me, how do you want your biscuit to be different? Or what price point do you want? You would ask me a
Yeah.
bunch of interesting questions that I'd have to answer.
Yeah.
And then you could make it for me and you could do the whole thing. Have a design team
Yeah.
that would put my logo on it and put all the info on it. And then would you be involved in distribution also?
That's the only thing we don't do is we don't broker it out. We do help people. We call it a go-to-market strategy. Are you targeting direct to consumer? But we don't broker. And I think that kind of helps too, because it separates us from like, again, staying objective.
Yes. You're making
So,
the food that I wanted at a price point that I could live with. If I only want to make 1 penny a biscuit, then you can make a much better food or a much better quality biscuit because I'm not looking to make money. By the way, I'm not doing this, folks, so don't get excited. But I just
I was
always
like,
thought,
darn.
yeah, and I know exactly what I would want a biscuit to be like, but I can also buy them. And if they're a little too large, I break them in half. Can I
Mhm.
just say that the old-fashioned milk bone biscuit, I mean, I have worked with and had sponsors of the fanciest brands in the world. And I adore them all, and I appreciate that they've only got 3 ingredients and humans can munch on them.
Yeah.
But I get milk bones at BJ's and I look at the ingredients, you know what? Looks pretty darn good to me, and the dogs adore them. And they're very affordable. So I'm not a snob. I look at the ingredients and I trust that a company that's made something for my entire life and before must be doing something right. Which isn't to say that boutique and charming and adorable handcrafted stuff isn't also great. But if you have two very large dogs who depend on being rewarded intermittently throughout the day,
Of course. Of
because
course.
I've taught them that they could be, it makes sense to do something that if you can read the box, and I bet you there's someone at Milkbone that would answer the phone. I don't know that, but I bet there is. They'd be foolish
Sure.
not to. An example, not to besmirch a brand, but an example of a brand that came out, I'm going to say a decade ago, but it may not be that like the time, was based in Westport, Connecticut. I grew up there. I thought, oh, this is so great. The guy, this one man, had these ads that said, my dog got cancer and I know it was the food. So I've made a food that isn't like that. It's called Blue Buffalo and you should buy it. Now, I could never get a phone answered in Westport, Connecticut from day one. I wanted to interview this man because I didn't think his dog had gotten cancer from whatever he'd fed before. I didn't think so. I don't believe so as an intelligent investigative reporter. People can argue about it, but I just don't think so. It was a golden retriever, I think, in which case it was genetically predisposed quite highly. To this day, there's never been anybody that I could talk to at that company. And they went from it being his negative sob story, if you will, and I'm sorry that his dog died for sure, to being huge amount of money spent on television showing ordinary Americans, a nice older black man saying, I feed this food because I have confidence in it and it's really good for my dog. And I don't know at what point and it's hugely successful, the brand. but based on this original negative origin story that nobody was there to back it up. There was no research. There were no trials that dogs who ate it never got cancer or were healthier in some other way. Were you aware of that at all at the time? That was a very strong story told at the outset.
No, I wasn't. Honestly, probably during that time, I was in clinic.
Yeah.
So I was heavily into medicine and not so heavy into nutrition. But it doesn't surprise me that that seems to be a very common origin story. My
Yeah.
dog got sick eating this diet, and now I've created this diet. And
Yeah.
it obviously resonates with someone somewhere because it seems to be the age-old story.
Yeah. And I think we have to be smarter consumers because that the idea of research, and as you said, was the research good? When I talked to my co-host on Cat Chat, Michael Maria Delgado, who's also a PhD as you are, but in behavior, not in nutrition, but she's very smart and she always delineates what areas are her expertise. And she'll always say, that's not my area. I'm like, hun, you're really smart. You understand research. You can comment on whether this research looked dodgy or solid. But the idea that the research has enough animals in it and it's done in a way that it isn't paid for by the company who wants the research to reflect well on them. Because if you go to a university that has a veterinary school, my understanding is it's about $250,000. It may have gone up in price to have them do research on your product, whether it's a dental chew or a food. So if you're giving a $250,000 and up to a university, saying, can you please show in research how good this is? Now, of course, they're not going to make it sound that biased, but that's what they're saying. I doubt anybody's ever come back and said, man, these animals were just withering on that food, or that dental chew got stuck in their throat or in their gut. I mean, isn't that one of the problems with research that's conducted by veterinary colleges who are very grateful to have that money, but they're not objective?
I had a different experience. So when I did my PhD, I had a company fund it, did the research. The research didn't show what they liked. And so that we just didn't, they wouldn't let me publish it. I'm not saying that's right or wrong either. I think non-significance also is important. But for at least with BSM, whenever we do research for brands, we say we don't guarantee anything. Like it can show up either way. Now, what you guys do with your data, you own, but
Right.
we as researchers, we're completely objective. We are going to here's the best design that we can put forward where you're covering your in is representative, you've got enough parameters, you're collecting at a specific time, you're controlling for all the things that you can control. For researchers, we love to have control over everything,
Yes.
but
Yes.
at the end of the day, we don't know exactly what we're going to see, and
So if
that's the
somebody
fun with research.
So if somebody did have a startup company or a young company and they were making any kind of a pet food or supplement, they could come to BSM and pay you the fee that you say is appropriate to the size of the study they want, and they can get the research that they want and need. And then if
Yeah.
it doesn't show them to be the shining star they believe themselves to be, they can also reformulate. If they
Mm-hmm.
start
Absolutely.
early enough, they can get a better outcome by changing what they're making.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that when I was first researching the dog Bible, that the AAFCO standard for being a complete and balanced food was one of the lowest bars I have ever encountered, and I doubt it has raised. If I recall, you had to feed 8 dogs, and it was usually beagles because those are the ones used in all this research. 8 dogs had to be fed this food for 6 months, and none of them could die. Period. They just had to live. Now, most dogs will live on most anything for 6 months. Their bodies are made to do that, right? They're survivalists, and free roaming dogs live on detritus, and they look pretty good. So, is that what the AFCO still requires to get their approval, which is, in other words, useless, in my opinion?
Yeah, there's a few parameters, a few blood parameters that you collect at the beginning, at the end. The dogs can't lose more than X amount, but they can gain as much as they want. And so, from a nutritionist standpoint,
Right.
obesity is just as dangerous as malnourishment. And honestly, A couple years ago, myself and another colleague, and Dr. Brad Quest, we challenged the AFCO
Cool.
standard and we said, if you want to test your food, here's all the parameters additionally you should be looking at. Dogs should be staying in ideal body weight. We should have their hearts checked, of course.
Yeah.
And so we have a modified AFCO study, if you will.
Oh my.
It meets the standard AFCO definition of a complete and balanced, but we also are concerned about, are these dogs maintaining health and
Yeah,
not
I
just
like that.
surviving,
Living.
right?
They're not just, yeah, because also kidneys would be a big deal. What if
Yeah,
the
yeah,
food was like really high and I don't know, sodium, potassium, who the heck knows? I don't know. Because I know how to read what you guys do. I
yeah,
certainly don't know how to write it. But I think it's just important to understand that the standard that is on all pet foods is barely a standard. Barely.
yeah.
So, given that, the fancier foods, the more elaborate foods, the foods making all these claims, I mean, they're comparing themselves to some kind of very dull ground zero. It's not like they're so much better than something fabulous. They're just saying they're better than something acceptable at best.
Yeah. And the caveat to that too is just because it's been tested, you can group diets into families. So as long as it's similar nutrient wise, you don't have to test that diet. As long as you test one diet and all the others that fit within that family. And I hear a lot and I see it on social media and stuff. Oh, this brand, they test all their diets. They don't.
No,
They test
too
one diet
expensive.
and it fits
Yeah.
within the family. So
Yeah.
are they really testing all their diets?
Is the one with venison the same as the one with beef, the same as the one with salmon in terms of what it's delivering? So it's not to make people suspicious of commercial dog food, because I don't think they should be, nor do I think that feeding rice, peas, carrots, and a bit of ground up chicken or beef at a very high price is a better food. I don't think it is. I've always advocated serve half the meal with fresh food of some kind from a can, or you can cook it if you want, and the other half with the best kibble that your dog does well on, that you can afford, and that you like their message as long as it's not too full of superlatives they can't stand behind. So you're feeding half wet, half dry, and not just highly processed carbs. I'm talking only about dogs. With cats, I am absolutely definitely sure it should only be wet food, no kitty crack, ever at all. It's an obligate carnivore. Another conversation for another day. But I think it's really important that these home cooked foods that are so pricey, that people have to be choosing them based on some other moral, ethical grounds.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Evermore, every single thing, they've gone to every farm where every animal was raised and then slaughtered. Every other ingredient is certified organic. It comes from farms and fields that feed humans. If that matters to you, and to some people it matters a lot, which is great, ethical sourcing's a big deal, then you choose it for that reason,
Yep.
besides the fact that your dog may love it and may do well on it. But just to say this human looking food, because we see a lot of it now on TV. So if you're spending, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, $1 million on TV advertising, it's a lot of money. That's where a lot of your money's going, or maybe your venture capital money. And they're
Yep.
showing you something that looks like you'd feed it to your kid in their high chair. Ground up chicken or beef and some whole vegetables, which, as I understand it, are not that digestible by dogs. A whole carrot and a whole piece of pea, they should be ground up. Is that true? I was told that once by a nutritionist, that the smaller and finer it's ground, the more that they can take in the nutrients, bioavailable or something. Is that true?
So you're increasing the surface area when you grind things up. So the digestive enzymes have a larger surface to break it down. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to how cooked, how gelatinized, how
Oh,
the difference between eating like a cooked piece of broccoli versus a raw piece of broccoli.
yes.
The end result is going to be a little different. And so you can grind up a raw piece of broccoli, but really cooking it and making sure that you're breaking down some of those fibers, that's really where things come in. And so is the cook appropriate? We talk about gently cooked and minimally processed, but really we should be cooking things to a point that makes them more digestible. The reason we soak beans and lentils, we consume them. you know.
Exactly. And they're grinding them up small. It doesn't look pretty, but it's giving you the most bang for your buck and giving the dog's gut the most good chance at
Yeah.
digesting it well. Stephanie Clark, we've run out of time. This has been so fascinating.
Yeah.
We definitely have to have another conversation about many of
Absolutely.
these aspects of pet food. And canned food is another one that's a fascinating mystery. What does it smell like when
Absolutely.
you open the can? Does it matter? Thank you so much. Thank you for being there. Thank you for all the hard work you've done in your studying and in the tests and research you continue doing. I look forward to a future conversation. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Yeah. Definitely let me know when you want to chat again.
Oh, yeah, I'm a foodie. I'll be back to you. Take care.
Awesome.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Tracy.